Dee-Coding session. Yes. Good evening and welcome, everyone. Welcome back to fractalu.com. I'm Dan Winter, and we have very exciting Alan Green with us, decoding Shakespeare's mysteries this evening. Alan is here with us, and I'm just going to do a quick 1-minute intro and then turn it over to Alan. So I am personally grateful for Alan's deep researches showing the deep codes that John Dee apparently put into Shakespeare's writing in a way that show us the focus on the science, breakthrough science in John Dee's day that was put through the work of Shakespeare, which puts a whole new light on our work in researching John Dee and the Ophanim Enochian that Terry and Alan is doing. And also we have James Egan in a few weeks, who's also an expert on Dee and Shakespeare. So we're really privileged to have Alan Green with us. And Alan is presenting using state-of-the-art visuals. He's mastered the technique of doing screen share for animations for the slide. It's going to be a very exciting evening. I'm so delighted that he's here. And just a quick note here, we have added just today to the fractalu.com and the registrations at learnitlive.com/fractalu. We have added the exciting 4 new upcoming courses each Sunday at 2 p.m. New York time. Upcoming next week, we have Tufan Guven, the expert on fractal geometry and our work in Turkey. We'll be teaching Introduction to Fractal Geometry for Beginners with also beautiful visuals. And then the following week, we have Graham Forscott, who is presenting Starchitecture and very advanced, beautiful geometric visuals from his Fractal Unified Field work. And then after that, we have James Egan presenting. He has written famously about 6 or so books relating also Dee and Shakespeare, the work that we're looking at tonight with Alan Green. So the mysteries are emerging. You know, Teresa Burns, who introduced us to a lot of this work, has helped us to meet James Egan. And so there's lots of the mysteries will unfold here. And finally, the 4th new upcoming just added on March 19 will be the Global Healing Meditation of Synchronized Therapi Plasma Centers on March 19. So there's lots of new stuff to see upcoming at fractalu.com. So that's the intro. I'm excited now to turn it over to Alan Green. Alan, you're on.
Thank you, Dan, and hello to everybody who's tuning in. Much appreciated. First thing I want to do is apologize for a cough that I've picked up on the plane back from Cairo and London. So I'll try to keep that to a minimum. And my Perrier can keep helping me here. I should get through it. First, I want to acknowledge the many regular attendees of Dan Winter's group, whose main interest in Fractal U is, I think, best described as the science of consciousness, with particular emphasis on the writings of John Dee, Renaissance Magus. Secondly, there's an alternative Shakespeare community that are tuning in today, and they may yet be unaware of John Dee's involvement in the authorship question. This is overall a diverse group, but here today I should imagine are mostly believers in the Oxfordian view that Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, was the bard. Maybe we have 1 or 2 Baconians and Marlovians as well. I want to stress that my own view on the matter will become clear from what you see today. But my personal philosophy is that I find it far more beneficial to the overall goal, which surely ought to be just truth. And if we don't honor that, I think we're no better than some of the standard model, the Stratfordians who alternative Shakespeareans oppose vehemently. Anyway, that will become clear, but I do find it best in my own public view statements to stay neutral. Not that I am neutral, but that I've managed to accomplish what otherwise would have been quite obviously impossible. I drove a Trojan horse right into Holy Trinity Church, Stratford, where the official bard is, or may not be, buried. But I even got them to help me park it. And there it sits, waiting only action from those who are committed enough to vote for it on the website, to be or not to be.org. So, as I say, my own stance will become clear, but I don't go out fighting the Stratfordians. I try to make friends so that much more can be done. Third group we're welcoming is there are several, a mixed bag here of people interested in, I suppose, esoteric science and Egyptology, and I think they came from having seen me on a CPAC conference about 4 months ago, and also due to a fortuitous explosion of interest just yesterday on Reddit, which I didn't even know what Reddit was. But somebody very nicely posted one of the YouTube videos, and it suddenly tripled in views. And thank you, Sam, for that. I haven't met you, but very nice of you to do that, and it certainly boosted the subscribers by a similar ratio too, which is nice. So today's talk will be a composite in which I'm going to cover three fields, basically Egyptology, with particular focus on the oft overdone Great Pyramid. So I'm going to give you a report on what I just did there 2 weeks ago on my second trip. Great Pyramid. Secondly, we're going to cover Shakespeare. Who was he? And time necessity doesn't allow me to get into any of the background on the authorship mystery and why there is doubt. I'm assuming that that's a given amongst most of us tuning in here. For those who don't know that there's a mystery at all, just Google Shakespeare and mystery, and you'll watch your life immediately disappear down a rabbit hole. It's really, seriously, that happened to me 12 years ago, and I haven't had a day off since. But to help with navigating that, we're also going to be talking about John Dee. Who was he? Again, none of the background, because that's ably covered on this forum by Teresa Burns and Alan Moore and many others, I'm sure. But it's also unably covered elsewhere on the famously plugged internet tubes. So I'll be showing Dee followers a heretofore unsuspected connection to his famous Enochian Tables, specifically the revised version given by the angel Raphael at Sloan Manuscript 307, the one so thoroughly covered by Rankine and Skinner. So, without much further ado, we'll just figure out now, we tested it earlier, how do we get onto the...
Yes, I think if you just bring your keynote forward.
I'm going to do that, sure. Okay. So I'm going to start off just simply with a brief report on Egypt that will then tie back together later. Because I want to show you this because I know many people are tuning in, specifically who haven't been on this forum before, looking for that. And so we'll just start with the, there we go. I want to stress that we were in Egypt doing something, it was not at all illegal. Well, it was just simply difficult to do without alarming the security. The security on the Giza Plateau has become very alerted, quite rightly so, because of terrorism. And so they're very, very cautious. And what the tour operator explained to us in advance was that we could certainly do what we wanted to do, but that if you take a tripod onto the plateau, they're on the lookout for anything that they don't understand. And obviously, in this day of the current age of iPhone mania, where everybody is taking videos and pictures all the time, that they can't stop that at all, and they don't want to. But anything that would look a little more professional with a tripod had to be avoided. And we had some specific technology that we brought with us for measuring a particular portion of the pyramid that has been really neglected. And this, the tour operator said, you know, if they see this, they just won't understand it because it has a laser beam, and they're kind of frightened of what that might mean. Are we trying to blow up the pyramid? Are we? It's not a phone. It's not an iPhone. And so we just had to be a little cautious. We were told that, you know, as everything is in tourist places, you can slip a little bakshish, which is Egyptian for tip, and perhaps that would be fine, and we could not perhaps I said it would be fine, but the police would turn away and let you use this, but we had to do it very, very quickly, and that was the problem. So we ended up using this, and I'm going to show you a rather funny video that developed from it. You know, they were concerned just that it has a limit, and if it was to be projected onto somebody's eye, perhaps we were assassins. No, we weren't that. It was just that, you know, they tell people that you can't take photographs in the King's Chamber, but of course, busloads of tourists roll up, show their iPhone, and the guards say fine, they all go up, and then they behave like maniacs, flashing all over the King's Chamber. It can't be stopped. But it's just the general view that they turn a blind eye if you will just tip a little bit, which we did. We had a funny moment in the process of this where someone showed up whilst we were focusing this laser at points along the trajectory of the base of the Great Pyramid, and we thought for a moment that possibly it was this guy. Not a well-known ex-president, but the man in the hat is Zawi Hawass, and you'll see us sort of a little panicked because a guy passed by who looked like Zawi, and we suddenly went, "Oh my God, he was the president of the Department of Antiquities of Egypt." He's not anymore, but he was the famous leader of that. And so, without any further ado, let me introduce you now to this first section in typical Hollywood fashion. You know, we're in Oscar season, so here is my little presentation to start off to honor the Oscar buzz kind of feel that we have going here.
It's a movie. Great one.
This is, that's Edward de Vere's shield. So I think you now know who I am.
Buying the traps of myth. Art screwy.
Okay, somebody got that.
All right. We shouldn't buy the Stratford myth. That's the thing.
Yes. Now, the section on Egypt, I'm just going to brief report on what we did so that people understand why I was just in Egypt. This will tie back ultimately because at first it's very hard to grasp how on earth can Egypt be related to Shakespeare or John Dee, but you will see, and so this is sort of the end of the story. I've spent 12 years in almost complete seclusion, doing, first of all, 6 years on study of the Shakespeare codes that I discovered that John Dee had written, and then all of a sudden the next 6 years on the mathematical codes that he had embedded into the title page of Shakespeare's sonnets, which then automatically and unsuspectingly leads you to Egypt and the Great Pyramid. So let me start by showing you an image of the Great Pyramid that was photographed by an RAF pilot in 1930. Perfectly fortuitously, he just happened to be flying over the Great Pyramid, which is the slightly more in the middle one here, and underneath that is Khafre, the second largest pyramid on the Giza Plateau. But you see, he just happened to catch the moment when it reveals that the Great Pyramid is eight-sided. This shadow that is cast is because the sun god, Ra, is pointing his beams west to east. There's the north to south alignment. As we all know, it's perfectly aligned. And here's Ra on the equinox. It only happens on the equinox that you see this clearly, and only from the air. And it only lasts for 10 to 15 seconds. And as the sun just moves this much, shadow disappears. Well, this has not been very thoroughly covered by scholars. In fact, the general mainstream Egyptologists say it's not even important. It's just collapsed in on itself, equally on all four sides. Or that it was for a structural purpose, which modern engineers debunk and say there's no perceivable difference at all. By minutely, what has happened is that it has been built, instead of having a straight edge, there's a minute indent. Now, can you imagine the difficulty? The Great Pyramid, that's job enough on its own. But then to say, you know what, fellas, I want you to just tiny bit indent it, so there's not even visible to the people on the ground. Well, so that was our purpose in going over there. And what led me to this was that on CPAC Talk, you can look at this on the website, tobeornottobe.org, but just to briefly show you that I had measured a certain aspect of the pyramid using just the basic proportion base, the half base, diagonal, the height, corner slope, and side slope. That's half base, that's the corner slope. This is a diagonal and a base, and then up the other side slope. And I was alerted to the fact that, oh my goodness, look, green is, to all intents and purposes, in ratio, it's 1 foot, the red is 1 cubit, and the purple is 1 meter, out by tiny amounts, relating to about 2/5,000ths of a foot. But then I realized that if you accounted for this tiny indent, which is exaggerated here because it's very, very tiny, but let's say it's like that, if you then start here and there and follow that way, it brings it all into alignment, absolutely 100% accurate. The foot related to the cubit related to the meter. A very, very crucial piece of information that seems to have been ignored completely. And as I say, the Egyptologists just don't seem to believe that this is important. We felt it was important, and so I went over there to measure it as accurately as possible with this modern technology. This will give you an idea of what's happening. This is what's known as a sliced down straight visual of the Great Pyramid from the side, showing the side angle. And as you'll see later, I had discovered that because of that angle, there are 12 major mathematical constants embedded in the basic proportions of the pyramid. We only presently are even aware that pi and phi and maybe e are there, but I'd gone into it at length and found 12 in the proportions. But that's because of the particular angle of 51.843. The meter, cubit, and foot relationship, it's impossible for it to be exactly right at that same angle. I mean, it's very, very close, as you just saw, out by 2/5,000ths of a foot. But nevertheless, if the builders of this wanted it to be absolutely accurate, they would have to have come up with a different angle. I mean, it's just geometrically impossible for foot, cubit, meter to be absolutely precisely on at exactly that angle. The angle would have to change ever so slightly. So that alerted me to the possibility that perhaps that's what was going on here. Perhaps if you just change that angle minutely, the green and the red become 100% perfectly aligned, which is the truth of it. And at some other point, foot meter connection would become perfectly aligned. And wouldn't this be wonderful if it was due to that indent that gives the minutely different angle? But rather than just postulate it, I felt I had to go over there and measure it accurately. And really, this is an exaggerated view. As I say, it's nowhere near like that. If you then bring this down to possibly what people had thought it was, because it has been measured in the past roughly, about a 37-inch indent, just over a yard, just under a meter. And that would mean that the angle has to be this particular thing. So we were looking for that, essentially. And if I found that, then I could say, well, we've measured it with modern day technology. It's absolutely accurate. That may be the absolute reason for this indent. But it now allows the building, the monument, to be a metaphor in stone for all these constants, as well as for this mystical foot-cubit meter relationship. They are all somehow connected, which is also a rather controversial viewpoint, but indeed Newton was looking for this during his time. Let me show you how we would essentially do these measurements so that you get a sense of it from two visuals. This is looking overhead, again, exaggerated. But we want to know that big E to little e measurement. We want this angle. Yeah. See it a little easier like that. That's the angle we're looking for. There's nothing like that. It's more like this. How can you measure that in the presently dilapidated state where we're only seeing the internal structure? Well, with the technology, that was our goal. And so we're looking for this little tiny line E to E, which is really that there, looking overhead. I want you to understand that this sloping angle, which you see above right, the above view there, and the side view here, tiny as it is, if it were 37 inches or thereabouts, then the mathematics that I had postulated would be true. So that was the goal. That would mean that instead of this being a straight edge, it's about a 179.5 angle. How can you measure that? Well, only by taking over this equipment that we used. So that's the goal, and we're looking to really get an accurate view of this little shaded red part. So here we are on the Giza Plateau. First of all, trying it from the north face, which is where all the tourists arrive. We're sitting in the van trying to do it inconspicuously, and we pretty soon found out that all the buses and all the camels and all the riders were in the way, and it wasn't going to happen. And there's our tour guides suggesting to us that we go to some other place, which we did. And this is the result we got. No, just kidding. But we did not light up the entire pyramid. We did get this, though. That was rather interesting. Thanks for the laugh. I hope the others who are muted are laughing, because, yes, we're not going there. Don't worry. Now the moment of truth. Oh, okay. I have to find another section. Where have I put that? Yeah, I think so. Just do that again. I think I skipped ahead too soon. This again, that's the north side, the busy side. We went over to the west side where we thought we would have more luck. And this is the west side. Now you get a good idea of the actual overwhelming size of the thing. And we're trying to basically point this laser beam at the left-hand corner and the midpoint, and several midpoints along the way, just so we can get an accurate angle all the way across on the same course level to the right-hand side. And in the midst of this, while all this was going on, and we had to do it very, very quickly because the policeman that we had tipped was saying, "Oh, you've got to be done in 2 minutes," because, you know, it's... And we suddenly had a panic. Somebody showed up who looked like Zawi Hawass, and fortunately our camera was running, and we had this little kicking up of a bit of a sandstorm. But the whistles are going off. The panic. Get rid of this stuff quick. It wasn't anybody alerted to us. It was just the tourist whistles of the guys driving the camels. But we thought we were perhaps going to have to tip a bit more. And yeah. So it did not, it turned out that it was not indeed Zawi Hawass. It was in fact just somebody that looked like him. Little excitement there. We get back to the hotel to find out what we've got because obviously we're excited.
Now the moment of truth.
And we load it into the software. And we, at this stage, you know, we've got a lot to learn about the software, so we don't know precisely how to configure it yet. We're just playing with it, and we realize, oh, okay, this is very, very good. But we've got to get it actually confirmed by an expert in the software, which is understandable. The same thing had happened in Holy Trinity Church, which I'll be showing you later. But the idea was to get, that's the left corner of the west face of the pyramid. This is the right corner, and we saw here, you know, there's a little indent there, but we're not absolutely sure if it's going to be 179.5. Fortunately, I had myself measured it out by foot, and I just walked up and down it and found the midpoint and measured the indent myself with a ruler and found that it was 3 feet, just over 3 feet. So that gives me 37 inches. I was very thrilled at that. If this angle does turn out to be 179.5 when we get it analyzed by experts, we only got back about 3 or 4 days ago, that will confirm it. But I had already seen that just by eye it is 3 feet 1 inch. You just don't see that on the overall scope of the pyramid, but there it is. Why is that important? It just seemed as though it's being ignored, this phenomenon of that only lasting 12 seconds on the equinoxes. And I will give you a little look into why that's very important as I switch over to another keynote. I didn't want to load too many keynotes at once in case we overloaded this thing completely. Let me put up number 2 here. So now it's best that I let you just keep that on the back burner, that angle in the pyramid. How are we going to get there from Shakespeare? I'm going to now give you the background that the John Dee aficionados are not aware of, and most of the new Shakespeare are looking at this for the first time, since I only posted it about 2 weeks ago, just before I went to Egypt. They're wondering too, is this genuine? How can John Dee be involved in this? So let me give you a bit of background so that you understand clearly what I did 6 years ago. I had discovered certain codes and written this book called Dee-Coding Shakespeare. It's in 2 parts. It starts out to be and it finishes not to or not to be. And essentially, I'm giving both viewpoints. I start out by giving the Stratfordian viewpoint, that the man born in Stratford, whose name was pronounced Shakespeare, is the orthodox Shakespeare that we've all been taught in school. But there is an enormous mystery, and as I say, I don't have time to go into all of that for you. But ultimately, by befriending the Holy Trinity Church over a long period of time, I managed to get permission to film there and to, in fact, here's me delivering excerpts from my Bard musical on Shakespeare's birthday, the 23rd, 2012. The place is covered in flowers, of course. There's a little hint of bardolatry when his birthday. Thousands of people march into the church, lay flowers and wreaths at the grave. Gravestone is right behind the piano here. The monument is up on the wall here. Here is the Holy of Holies high altar stone, where the codes had shown me Shakespeare has left physical proof of why there is a mystery surrounding his identity, and that he's embedded it into, there's the close-up of the altar, embedded it into the sonnets, both the cover and the dedication, which I show you here. And he says the sonnets are inside there. Now, if we were to find anything at all, it would be the next Mona Lisa. Shakespeare left nothing. No manuscripts, no plays, no poems, a page, not a line, a word in his own hand. Greatest writer, in the entire history of the English language, never wrote a letter to anyone. No one ever delivered a letter to him. Something's up. So let's have a look now at the three portions of this brilliant encryption that I believe, and will show you, that John Dee has created. Now, John Dee is known to be the inspiration for Prospero in The Tempest, but that's agreed by the Stratfordians. But that he was at all, in on some sort of cover-up, this is not known. We're going to deal with the three parts of it: Sonnets Dedication on the left, the Gravestone, which doesn't have Shakespeare's name on it, a most peculiar, cryptic statement on the Gravestone. It only mentions Jesus' name, and the monument under his bust. Starting with something that the traditional scholars will not even go near, Sonnet 121. Shakespeare says, "No, I am that I am, and they that level at my abuses reckon up their own. I may be straight, though they themselves be bevel, by their rank thoughts, my deed must not be shown." Now, these are all Freemasonic terms: level, reckon, straight, bevel, rank. Rank is a wonderful word. It can refer to their rank within the secret organization, which I am identifying here as the Rosicrucians, which eventually became the Freemasons. But it's also a wonderful word. It's poetically rank, stinks to high heaven. Their rank thoughts. And he's saying that they are saying that his deeds must not be shown. Something needs to be covered up. Perhaps this is explaining why there is a cover-up, why there's literally zero paper trail concerning the man from Stratford to do with plays, poetry. But this phrase, "I am that I am," is so inflammatory, it is ridiculous. It is, as you know, the name given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai as he's going down with the Ten Commandments. He turns to the burning bush. He says, "Who shall I send me? Who shall I say sent me?" They're never going to believe this. And God says, "Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh," translated, "I am that I am," the name of God. Now, the interesting thing is,
"You have been found guilty by the elders of the town of uttering the name of our Lord, and so as a blasphemer, you are to be stoned to death."
and that's basically what should have happened to Shakespeare for using the name "I am that I am." No one was allowed to use it. King James, who ascended to the throne immediately after Elizabeth's death, new law in 1604. The law was stating that no one can use the name of God in a play, a poem, a parade. Penalty, £10 for each infraction. That's about $10,000 today, and it's widely suspected that 1,000 copies of the sonnets were printed, so he should have been fined $10 million. But that would have been the least of his worries, because actually using the name "I am that I am" was forbidden. He's not using it, he's saying it in the first person. He's saying, "I am that I am," equating himself with divine consciousness. It goes deeper. That edict issued by King James was called the Act of Abuses. He's saying to the king, "They that level at my abuses reckon up their own." He's saying, "What's your own abuses, man? How can a commoner, how can anybody get away with it, really, but a commoner from Stratford waltz into town, blaspheme, 'I am that I am,' and say, by the way, about that law that you brought out about abuses, what's your own?" He should have been hauled off by the Star Chamber, tortured, hung, drawn, and quartered several times. No one was called in. No one. Okay. "I am that I am" was adopted by the Rosicrucians and later Freemasons as a secret code in the following way. The Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, there's the Hebrew under it, begins with Aleph, Aleph, Aleph. And here's the Hebrew alphabet on the top, and then it is reversed on the bottom, so that the first letter, Aleph, becomes the last letter, Tav. turning it around, it's called an atbash cipher. It was a way of just hiding these three alephs and turning them instead into three tubs or taus in Greek, letter T. And the three tau crosses, therefore, that it represents are called the triple tau, and they represent several things. They were adopted by the Royal Arch Masons, three, called the triple tau. They represent the three crosses on Calvary, but scholars know that the Romans did not crucify Jesus or people in general with a Latinized cross. That came later as a symbol of Christianity. It was a tau cross, like this. Much cheaper, much easier. Just two pieces of wood. Well, that triple tau then became synonymous as an encoding of the name of God, I am that I am, but also by linking them together in this way, three tau crosses, each joined at the base of the stipes of the cross, it looks like a TH. And TH represents the Freemasons clavis ad thesaurem, key to the treasure. Theca ubi res pretiosa deponitur, place where the precious thing is concealed. And, most of all, Templum Hierosolima, or Temple of Jerusalem, first Solomon's Temple. So it's an encoding that is ripe with all kinds of meaning. I am that I am, God, and these three secret Freemasonic meanings. Well, here's the gravestone. Anybody see a triple tau in that gravestone? Right there in the middle, representing the tau cross. The name of Jesus is the patibulum across the top. The TTT is down there, the stipes. What are those Y's? Blessed be ye man, we think of it saying, we always say, oh, ye old inn, ye old fish and chips, etc., etc. It wasn't pronounced Y, it's a printer's thorn, and it's a shortcut for saying TH. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. But he's aligned it, whoever carved it, into a cross, a tau cross. So you've got a triple tau, and you've also got two Y thorns, which each mean TH. And the triple tau itself means and is represented by TH. It's literally redolent with the name of God three times under Jesus. And then, does anybody notice that where there is a TH in this cryptic verse on the gravestone, it's not a TH? To dig the dust enclosed here, blessed be the man that spares these bones. It's ligature. This is known as a printer's ligature. It's not a TH. It's a TH representing the secret way of conveying this name of God. So now you've got five THs essentially. One triple tau, two YTHs, two THTHs, indicating what? The key to the treasure and the place where the precious thing is concealed. And five of those five crosses, ultimately show up again somewhere important. Five crosses, the five wounds of Christ, the stigmata wounds of Christ, two in the hands, two in the feet, and one in the side. We will get to that. What about the monument? Are there any THs there? Yeah. And you know, it's amazing. You can look at this for years and never see it. I did. I looked at it about a couple of years. I never saw it. And then all of a sudden, once I found this clue, I went, oh my goodness, look at that. All the THs in the monument are screaming the same thing. Secret of God. I am that I am. Freemasons, indicator of divine consciousness. TH. They're grouped as four on the left-hand side and a group of six on the right-hand side. Isn't it?
No way!
Well, way. But I also noticed that there are two other ligatures there that are never ever seen anywhere else on any monuments. I did a completely thorough search of all the Renaissance graves and monuments. The word me is also ligatured, the M and the E, the M and the E. So you've got a pattern here. If those were THs, me, if they were THs instead of me, one could sense the self, perhaps the real self, the divine self. If they were THs, you wouldn't see that group of 6 and 4 to bleed into each other. But as it is, he's made it very clear that there's a group of 4, a group of 2, and a group of 6. Read left to right, Latin Roman fashion, it's 4-2-6. Read right to left, Hebraic fashion, it's 6-2-4. And Dee uses Hebrew codes all over the place, so possibly that's what he's saying here. 4-2-6, this is Shakespeare's baptismal certificate. 1564, April 26, baptized. 4-2-6. Son of Johannes Shakespeare, marked with 3 crosses that everybody assumes means the way that his family signed their names, because the family was illiterate. But perhaps it means something else. Here now we're looking at the dedication to the sonnets. It's aligned in 3 inverted triangular shapes of 6 lines, 2 lines, 4 lines. Inverted pyramid shapes. There are also dots between every word. And John Rollitt, I wasn't the person to discover this, but John Rollitt, who is now passed on, postulated at one time to the Oxfordian community that possibly the dots between every word perhaps were a clue along with the 6-2-4, and perhaps they're just helping us count. Let's count the 6th word and the 2nd word and the 4th and the 6th and the 2nd and the 4th. And so he did that. These sonnets all by Evere the 4th. Quite a kerfuffle within the Oxfordian community, because it seemed to say these sonnets all by Evere. De Vere often played on his name Vere by using the word. Here's a poem called the Echo Poem by the Earl of Oxford. Fever, Vere, ever, Vere, quiver, Vere, deliver, Vere. The Echo told the truth, and the Earl of Oxford's basic motto on his heraldry is not truer than truth. So there was quite a bit of excitement at the time, but Rollitt later took his own postulation back. Unfortunately, I think he was really onto something, and I followed it up. But the Evere, these sonnets all by Evere, possibly be, but nobody could figure out what is the 4th T. I mean, why would he say these sonnets all by myself, Vere, but what is the 4th T? Art Neuendorfer speculated another clue in this. No, the person after the 3 crucified on Calvary, Jesus and the good thief and the bad thief, was St. Peter. And he asked to be crucified upside down, saying he was not worthy of dying the same way as his Lord, because he denied Christ 3 times. All right. Now we must move into how did they make codes during the Renaissance period? Cardano grill. You would take what would be basically the ciphertext, the apparent message, and put it into a particular grid. So I'm just taking the Sonnets Dedication here to the only begetter of these ensuing sonnets and putting it into a 19 grid. At the time, I thought 19 because the tau was the 19th letter of the Greek alphabet, and also of the Roman alphabet when they had no letter J or U. I've since found it's much deeper than that, and it's to do with the Great Pyramid, but we'll get to that. Put it into a 19 grid. Now you can put it into every possible grid and it does not show the triple tau, but only in the 19 grid does it show you a triple tau vertically. That would be known then as the plain text. The message is hidden horizontally. You get the right grid length, you find a vertical message. 3 taus. 4th T. Might the 4th T be the inverted symbolism of St. Peter asking to be crucified upside down? An upside down tau cross, literally a 4th T, revealing the name Revere. Okay, let's have a look at the gravestone. Again, I put it into every. I mean, Art Neuendorfer was shouted down by the Oxfordian community, and I have to say, unfortunately, shamefully. I think it was terrible that they did that, and shouted him off the boards. Rollitt had said, no, 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 I'm not right. I can't find out what the fourth T is. Art Neuendorfer said, maybe it's this. And he was completely discouraged. I was not discouraged because nobody knew me and I just went into working on it myself. I think it set the community back about 10 years because I think he was right. But anyway, nobody at that time wanted to look at codes in the Oxfordian community. So I then looked at every possible grid. Is there a triple tau in the Gravestone? The only one that would provide it was a 17 grid. Well, he's the 17th Earl of Oxford, and I thought at the time that was the reason. But again, it goes deeper than that. It's to do with the pyramid. But there's the triple tau, and here's the upside down tau cross right next to it, spelling out the name Veers, family name of the Veers. So you've got to, what about the monument? Set that into a 55 grid. Why arbitrarily? Because I tried every grid and there's no triple tau anywhere except in a 55 grid, and there you have a triple tau and the word E there as an inverted tau cross balanced against it. Okay, so we're getting possibly somewhere. At least there's uniformity. There's something you can say, well, that is the same there, and there. Perhaps this is saying something. Perhaps this is the fourth T. Perhaps Evir is the fourth T. Perhaps he's crucifying his identity and equating himself not with Christ. He's not saying, I am that I am in that sense. He's saying the name of God has been crucified, as it was with St. Peter. Maybe. I'm just saying that. It's a possibility. But he's equating himself with Peter, who felt himself unworthy, but was doing Jesus' work. Later, he became the first pope, of course. And there you have it. He's put three inverted tau crosses, the V and the V and the V, that appears in the Sonnets Dedication. Where else does it appear? All over the place in Freemasonic symbolism. These are medals given out by the Freemasons for certain levels. There's the triple tau. Here's the three inverted triangles. They're on their aprons when they have their initiatory sessions. I'm sure they're a lovely bunch of guys. I'm not saying they're out to rule the world, as most of the internet says, but there's certainly some symbolism going on here that they were familiar with the triple tau, and whoever did this on the sonnets put it into a 624 to indicate self-abnegation. Turn it around. 426. Here's the gravestone and the monument. 4 lines, 2 lines, 6 lines. Okay. We've already known that 426 is the date that Shakespeare was baptized. It's the date we have from which is calculated his birthday, because nobody knows when he was born. Now, the sonnets are all about the passage of time. Temporal time, eternal time, spiritual time. There's a lot else going on there, but one of the hallmarks is time. And it just occurred to me, perhaps he's using it as a calendar. I'm not saying that every single date refers to every single sonnet refers to a date, but if you were to start with January 1 being sonnet 1 and going all the way through to the 154 sonnets, that would mean the 32nd sonnet is representing February 1, the 60th March, and it ends on here, June 3rd, and the next you'd have to start a whole new section of put the sonnets in again, because you then couldn't be marking out time and have every date be referenced by a sonnet. So just a supposition, perhaps he's using that 154 and then sending it out again in another and another. That would give him a calendar to work from in which he would be able to identify certain dates from their position in the sonnets. I'm not going to go into all of these, but all of these are dates that are significant to the story. Dates of Edward de Vere's children being born, the date of the Queen dying, the date of her coronation, the date of James' ascension. I'm just going to show you this one in red. Sonnet 116 would refer to a certain date on that calendar. Well, if you look at Shakespeare's sonnets, we go from sonnet 114 to 115 to 119, 117. The only mistake in the numbering of the sonnets. Is it a mistake? John Dee uses this symbolism of inverting a 6 against a 9 all over the place. So I don't have time to show you all that, but I knew it was one of his hallmarks. And I'm suggesting here that he perhaps said to the author of the sonnets, let's make this 119 and let's indicate something with it. In other words, that date is wrong. It says, love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an E-there fixed mark. That's sonnet 116, which represents April 26th. Baptism. If he's saying by this that that date is wrong, perhaps the sonnet ends by saying, if this be error and upon me proved, I never writ nor know I never loved. The thing is not an error. That 119 is not an error, it's a clue. And if you read it as a clue, it's saying this date is wrong, as the sonnet number is wrong. So that's April 26. Now, reversal is a trademark all over this story. So I started looking at June 24th, 624, the reverse of 426. In the 16th century, the pagan calendar celebration of the summer solstice, Midsummer's Day, was celebrated on June 24th. It still is in some cultures. Yes, technically it's shifted now to June 21 or 22. But in those days, the solstice was celebrated on June 24th, a whole holiday from June 23rd to June 24th, Midsummer Night's Eve, leading into June 24th, Midsummer Night's Day. It's the cusp of passing over from Gemini into Cancer, the 6-9 inversion that the Royal Arch Freemasons use as their symbol to say this is when the sun is at its highest and it seems to stop in the sky and then it starts to dip down again. That cusp of passing from Gemini into Cancer is the Royal Arch. 6 and 9 inverted against each other, the Cancer symbol. It's also the feast of St. John the Baptist, who is the patron saint of Freemasons. It's also the night Edward de Vere died. I'll leave that with you for a moment. I'm not taking that to its logical or illogical conclusion. I'm just saying that's the date when Edward de Vere disappeared from the face of the planet on this night of celebrations. It literally wasn't there the next day from June 23rd to June 24th while the world around him was celebrating Midsummer Night Eve. Next day he's gone. Okay. Here again, it is an ever-fixed mark. That's the wrong sonnet number. E-there fixed. Has E-there fixed that date? Decide to look at what other sonnets he uses the word fixed. He uses it in sonnet 21, which represents June 24. Fixed.
M-O-A-I doth sway my life.
I'm jumping now to another position of, let me just try this momentarily. I must tell you that I was without power. We had a bit of a scare over the last 2 days. We had a storm in LA and I was completely without power for 36 hours. We were not sure if we were even going to be able to do this webinar. So I've just neglected to cut that part out. I'm going to show you a little more clearly here. Reversal is what we're talking about though. 426 reversed to 624. 426, Shakespeare's baptism. 624, De Vere's death. Both dates referenced in the sonnets as fixed. There's only one other date in the sonnets, or one other sonnet where he uses the word fixed. Corresponds to Edward de Vere's birthday. MOAI. We all know there's a play within a play in Hamlet, right? But nobody particularly knows there's a code within a code in Twelfth Night. This scene in Twelfth Night, Malvolio has been given a subterfuge letter, trick him. He's reading it. They're hiding in the bushes to watch him. And they're trying to make him think that Olivia is in love with him. He's reading the letter. He picks it up. But he goes on and on and on about this MOAI, a code that he's trying to solve. Can't solve it. In fact, the code is never solved within the play. It's another one of those non sequiturs. It's just, what's that there for? And people have written whole books about this. What does MOAI mean? MOAI mean? So here's Alec Guinness.
MOAI doth sway my life.
And Fabian, hiding in the bushes, gives us a clue.
Fustian riddle.
A fustian riddle, he says. You know what fustian is? It's from the root fustat, which means tent, which refers to the place in Egypt where a caliphate, I think, named Amir, I need to correct myself on that if that's wrong, but the first person that came from over to basically trample on Egypt and set up camp there. And he set up his camp in Cairo, but it wasn't called Cairo, it was called Fustat. And it was known as a place where you could get very coarse cloth that was used in tents. And that cloth was called bombast. Anyway, there's a whole other riddle for you. But here's a side line. MOAI doth sway my life. And Fabian says, a fustian riddle. So it means it's a riddle about Fustat, the tent, the first original name for Cairo, where the Great Pyramid is. And a line or so later, Alec Guinness.
If this fall into thy hand, revolve.
Now, he doesn't know what to do with this line. No actors know what to do with that line. They just turn around on stage. If this fall into thy hand, revolve. But if you revolve, MOAI, you get IAOM. The John Dee aficionados amongst us will know that those are the four letters that are revolved to give in the Enochian Tables on one of his angel names, Maya. What is it? MIAO. But IAOM is the reversal of MOAI, and IAOM turns out to be the highest secret of the Freemasons. It's the sacred word that is given to Freemason initiates one letter at a time over years of proving their worth. It can sometimes take, I'm not a Freemason, but you can find all this online now. But under penalty of death at the time, they would sign this oath saying, I will not reveal this secret word. And it was given to them one letter at a time. First they'd get M, then they'd get O, maybe a few years later, then they'd get A. And when they finally got I, it was only by invitation. Once they descended through all the 32 levels of Freemasonry, then they had to be invited. Could not earn it by worth other than to be invited by the Grand Master. Then they would be given I, and then they would be told, we gave it you all in reverse. So you wouldn't be able to figure out what it was at all, but now you know what it is. It's IAOM. And it's a breathing technique. It's a pranayama breathing technique to bring about enlightenment, same that yogis use in India. A breathing technique. It is meant to be pronounced a certain way. And here's Shakespeare giving it away in a fun, farcical scene in Twelfth Night. MOAI to sway my life. If this fall into thy hand, revolve. My goodness. Can you imagine if there were Rosicrucian become Freemasons hiding in the wings, William Cecil for one, would be mad as hell. There he is giving away our secret code in a joke scene in a play. But he hasn't given it away because, no, just said, oh, if this fall into thy hand, revolve. But it turns out to be a lovely metaphor for the whole idea of bringing about reversal, balancing duality of creation. Now, let's find out where that scene is in the first folio. Most expensive printed book in the world. Last one that went on sale, on auction rather, at Sotheby's, fetched $6.5 million. One book. Book printed containing 36 Shakespeare plays, published in 1623. And the scholars that deal with this say it would have been so much more of a valuable if only they'd done a good job, but they did a botched job. They got all so many page numbers wrong. Yes, they did. This book has been studied more than almost any other book than the Gutenberg Bible. Yeah. Page numbers are wrong in certain places. But those that study it say, oh, look, this one came off the press after that one, after that one, after that one. They can recognize certain signatures. They can say, oh, they changed the comma here. Oh, they changed the spelling of this here. They changed this here. Never do they change the wrong page numbers. Never. Every first folio that's still in existence has the same wrong page numbers. Well, there's one exception, and I can't go into that. There's only one tiny exception, and I believe it's part of the codes as well. But nevertheless, all of these are part of the codes. Can you imagine the printers? They must have been thinking, you know, they're taking this off the press in the stinking circumstances of the printing press and saying, look, and the guy, Ben Jonson, presumably, is saying, no, change that comma there and change this. And they go, yeah, but what about the page number? It's wrong. Oh, no, don't worry about that. They must have thought, these aristocrats have more money than sense. Here's page 264, because there is no page 426, and there is no page 624, because there are 3 sections, comedies, histories, and tragedies, and once the new section starts, they start numbering again. So as high as you can go is 264, using those numbers. On page 264, it says, that scene that you just saw. Emma way I doth sway my way. What does it say at the very absolute top? No man must know, no man must know. What follows, the numbers altered. No man must know. And what follows? The next number is 273. It's altered, yes. Okay. But no man must know. And it's just a mistake. It's just a printing error. There are so many. There are over 60 in the first folio. They're all part of the code. Here's my favorite, the very last pages of the folio. Page 398. What should be the next page number? Obviously 399, but it's not. It's 993. Mirror image. The mirror imagery device is John Dee's favorite. He uses it all over the place, as I will show you some instances of. 426, 624. Is it John Dee? Okay, let's go back to Gravestone in its 17 grid. John Dee was the self-described ears and eyes of Her Majesty, represented here by 2 perfectly balanced T-squares, Freemasonic T-squares, ears, eyes. Here's Her Majesty in her favorite frock, covered in ears and eyes. She's telling you, I have my spies everywhere. You're not going to get anything over on me. This is amazing, isn't it? It's wonderful. Ears and eyes and mouth on her dress. He was known to be her ears in the court and her eyes out in Europe, where he was one of her spies, possibly the most important one. Yes, there's a rumor his code number was 007. Yes, we've never found any actual evidence of it. I wonder why. It's a secret code number. He's not going to write it in his diaries, even though some people on the internet say he has, and it's these 2 eyes with a monocle over it or something. But he does leave it in his encryption in the gravestone. O-O-D. In the shape of a 7. Did you get that? Perhaps I should go back exactly so you can see it. In the shape of a number 7. And his name is twice there as 2 vertical beams. Okay. Well, enter these angels, all you people now who are familiar with the Enochian Tables and use it for your own purposes. And I have no idea of that world. I specialized only in finding what I could find to do with the Shakespeare mystery. But this is going to be a surprise, I think, to most of you, that the Enochian Tables, the revised Enochian Tables, changed by Raphael. And as we all know, he asked him to change certain lettering and possibly the positions of the quadrants. Why? I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it? Some believe this is the only authentic one. Others use the one used by Golden Dawn. But there's nothing like this. And if I had tried to solve this using anything that you can basically find, 99% of what you find on the internet is the Golden Dawn or other versions of it, it doesn't work. It doesn't solve anything. But this one specifically solves the codes to do with Shakespeare. So here's John Dee's Enochian Tables, dictated to him in one long angel session, which started on June 24th, 1584. Sunday, Krakow, June 24th, the announcement that we're going to have this happen. So to prepare, to fast, to pray. It will be a long session. We're going to dictate to you exactly how to draw all these characters. We're going to dictate them to you through Edward Kelly. So that's exactly June 24th, 1584 is exactly
20 years ago!
before Edward de Vere died. 1604, June 24th. And here are the Enochian tables put into a nice looking spreadsheet. I wonder how many squares there are. 156 in each quadrant. Can anybody add that up? I know you're all screaming on there somewhere. 2, 4. Okay. Well, I decided to count the characters in the gravestone, in the monument, and in the Sonnets Dedication. Sonnets Dedication, 178. Monument, 332. Gravestone, 114. Anybody have any idea what that might add up to? It's pretty much an open invitation, isn't it? If you've got now ciphertext, which you've already seen shows other things hidden in the grids, the inverted tau crosses and the triple tau. But now you've got 624 characters pointing what? To the Enochian tables that has 624 characters. I think anybody in their right mind, and I wasn't exactly in my right mind at the time, but I did it anyway, would build the same structure into sonnets and point it at the Enochian tables. But you have to know what the key is, don't you? I mean, if these letters are going to be put across, which I do, I put them across here. That's the sonnets, the monument, gravestone. Put in what order? Why this order? Because it's the only order that gives you 624 to 624. 624 lines in the sonnets, then 2, then 6, then 2 at the bottom in the monument, and then 4. Perfectly, beautifully balanced. I thought, okay, that's probably the order in which they need to go in. But what's the key? How are we going to get a message out of this? Remember the Royal Arch Freemasons motto, nothing is wanting but the key. TH, clavis ad thesaurem, key to the treasure. But that TT that is being pointed to there with that red arrow on the right, that's the signature of Thomas Thorpe, who is supposedly the person who wrote this dedication. Is he? Or did Dee and De Vere and or some other real Shakespeare simply use the fact that Thomas Thorpe was a known printer, not a very successful one, I might add, who might have needed the gig, and use those TTs, paid him off, and said, "Here, let's use your initials." Maybe. I'm just saying. Maybe. There's TT. Turns out, a year after he wrote this controversial 1609 dedication for the sonnets, which sounds like it's written by an illiterate, it doesn't make any sense. We find Thomas Thorpe writing one of the cleverest, wittiest, and certainly most curious dedications ever to the Earl of Pembroke, Grand Master of the Freemasons. Right? Married, well, the two Pembroke brothers are both married to Edward de Vere's daughter and engaged to another of his daughters. And he signs this one, THTH, for Thomas Thorpe. These are the people to whom the first folio is dedicated. Oxford's family. THTH. What does TH mean? I am that I am, I am that I am, the triple tau, the triple tau. The TT is the key to the treasure. Here's the TH at the bottom of a Freemasonic medal for getting to some particular level where it says nil nisi clavis dies. Nothing is needed. That's the key. Okay. The TT at the bottom of the Sonnets Dedication then stands for Thomas Thorpe. Thomas Thorpe, the publisher, it's the key. So I literally find where are there double T's in all that ciphertext, and you point them, there are 5 sets of them, you point them here to the Enochian Tables and find that they are pointing out certain letters in the Enochian Tables, which when we then bring them down, they say living page. Now Dee does something extraordinary, never done anywhere in cryptography. But I didn't know this, and so I tried it. What did I do? Revolve. If this fall into thy hand, revolve. Mirror image. He loves it. This never happens anywhere. I mean, if you have a key in the ciphertext, the key can't be in the plain text as well. But it is here. Because if you look at the Enochian Tables, there's exactly 5 sets of double T's pointing back to the plain text now. And you put those letters down, it says Yo Stigmata. Living page, Yo Stigmata. Okay, admittedly it's open to interpretation, but a living page is a document that has been kept alive, kept for posterity for you. It's a living page. Where is it? Yo Stigmata. Yo is a Middle English term that means look at. But it doesn't have just that meaning. Look at it means specifically look, really pay attention to. Stigmata, rice wound. Are we getting rice wound? The 5 crosses that represent rice wounds that are on the gravestone, remember? Yo Stigmata. Living page. He's even got the phrase living page on the monument. Leaves living art but page to serve his wit. His art has been left alive to announce his wit, his ability, his cleverness. Okay. But what does Dee say? What does, Shakespeare say? If this fall into thy hand, revolve. Says that through Malvolio in an unsolved code in 12th night, revolve. He also then after that says be opposite with a kinsman, which happens to be a perfect anagram of opposite Ben in a mask. And the actual, that's the start of the first folio. Ben Jonson poem, and then Shakespeare's picture, which looks like he's in a mask, but I don't have time to go there. So he says revolve, and then he says be opposite. He's telling us in the coding of 12th night, revolve. Okay, so now, this is never done in cryptography. Turn the ciphertext absolutely upside down, point the TTs back into the Enochian Tables. Now they're going to point to completely different letters, aren't they? Yeah. And this is rather trickier because they come down and they say something incomprehensible, Davarisia. But of course, we haven't yet doubled, taken the TTs in the ciphertext, plain text, Enochian Tables back to the inverted sonnets monument. Gravestone. It says dhue.net. Apparently the angels knew the internet was coming, and so I bought that domain name, dhue.net. Seriously. But if you shift that dot, it says dhewn et. D as hewn, created this. Et. Et is the Hebrew first letter and last letter. Et. It's never translated into English from the Old Testament to the New because it means the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega. He's done this from the beginning to the end. And if you put those into a modern day anagram server, you find the top choice out of 79,000 and odd possibilities. It says, I have hewn desiderata. The absolute top choice. That is the perfect anagram of what he's left, even with a period at the end of it. I have hewn desiderata. I have cut into, the only meaning for hewn is cut into stone. Desiderata is Latin for my desires, what I want you to know. Living page, Yo Stigmata, I have hewn desiderata. Perfect Shakespearean form, rhyming tetrameter. He usually writes in pentameter, to be or not to be or not to be, that is the question. But when he writes in tetrameter, it's always to indicate spiritual matters. The witches in Macbeth. speaking tetrameter. Bubble, toil and trouble, fire burn on cauldron bubble. The gravestone is written in tetrameter. Good friend, for Jesus' sake, for bed, big with dust and close it here. Living page, your stigmata, I have hewn desiderata. It's telling you, there's a living page, look at the Christ's wounds where I have cut into stone what I want you to know. Okay, where in Holy Trinity Church are the stigmata? They're there in the Holy Altar. Now, when I went there, I noted that the technical promo that Stratford gives out, I'm sorry, lies blatantly. It says, if you look at our altar, it only has 4 of the original 4. Now that was an alarming thought. Should have 5. It says ours has only 4. And I'm looking for the 4th T. Right? The triple tau plus the 4th T. He says these sonnets all by Eve, the 4th T. And I note, I see that there's a cross on the side, which should not be there. You can't see it yet, but I'll show you close up in a moment. Not only is that there, but the whole thing is desecrated because they are carved. The crosses that are supposed to be on the surface, the 5 crosses representing the stigmata wounds, 2 have been chopped off. Now let me show you how this is working. There's the grid of good friend for Jesus' sake, the gravestone. He has actually constructed this to give us a pictogram. It says blessed on top. Here I am examining the altar stone, and those are where the 5 crosses of the stigmata wounds of Christ are supposed to be. But cursed below, because 2 of them at the back chopped off during the Reformation. They're not there. And that altar stone is in a state of desecration. And it was then that Henry VIII, around about 1535, said, no, I want to marry Anne Boleyn. We're not going to be Catholic anymore. We're going to be Protestants. The whole country goes into upheaval. They start chopping up everything in the old faith. And if you go into Holy Trinity Church, all the images of Christ are hacked off the ceiling. You can see it, still see the sword marks on them. And these 2 crosses were gone. And it is known that to save the altar stone, the monks took it down into the catacombs, deep beneath the church, and hid it there. Not before, apparently, 2 of the crosses were hacked off, desecrated. First. Oh. Maybe a hint, yes? Look at where I was baptized. And the 3 crosses. Well, he wouldn't have been baptized because it wasn't even there then. It had been already taken down. But it's signed by 3 crosses. Maybe a hint to look for where there are 3 crosses, where there should be 5. The old stigmata. Look carefully at Christ's wounds. But vertically, there's our triple tau, which means I am that I am. Sonnet 121. Shakespeare. You know, the only other person, and in the manhunt that has gone on for these clues, Shakespeare, followers have searched high and low, attics, libraries, everywhere for the least hint of anything. And so everything has been scoured, and we know that nobody used that expression, I am that I am. It's a mystery. How did he get away with using it? Only one other person used that expression in writing. It occurs in a letter from Edward de Vere to William Cecil, who was his ward of court. De Vere was the ward to William Cecil for years. And this letter, Edward de Vere is warning Cecil not to spy on him, because Cecil was known for spying on everybody. And he says, I serve her majesty, and I am that I am. Another interesting footnote, folks. Right next to it, triple S. Triple S is the Freemasonic acronym for Stiletto Sidesh Solo. It means Holy of Holies. In Solomon's Temple, the Holy of Holies, right next to the triple tau. What's in Solomon's Temple? Is the Holy of Holies. What's inside the Holy of Holies? The Ark of the Covenant. with the Ten Commandments. Basically, the name of God. That's where the Ten Commandments were given to Moses when God gave him his name. Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh. He has constructed this to read blessed at the top, cursed at the bottom, SSS, Holy of Holies. Now, it's a rather beautiful thing here. That's the Hebrew word for the Holy of Holies in Solomon's Temple. Does anybody know their Hebrew? I can't hear your microphones, of course, so I'm just going to have to give it away, but some of you probably know. That is pronounced Via. The Holy of Holies in Solomon's Temple, written in Hebrew, is pronounced Devir. It comes from the root davar and devarim. Devarim means word. So in Hamlet, it says, feigning madness, Polonius, that is modeled on Cecil, is asking him, what do you read, sir? He says, oh, words, words, words. He's saying, Devir, Devir, Devir. Another footnote. What else has he got there? Blessed on top, cursed beneath. The crosses have been hacked off, but it's the Holy of Holies. It is the Holy of Holies. It's where Mass is said, and it contains the Devir. And look what he's put into the side of it. Gandhi, brilliant cryptographer, brilliant Renaissance magus, speared into the side. What does that represent? Spear in the side, the holy spear of Longinus that basically pierced Christ's side, the fifth of the stigmata wounds, which proved that he was dead. Water and blood came out, saying, okay, he's dead now, which then got converted into the mystery of Mass. So you take the blood of the wine and the bread of the body and say Mass at the Holy of Holies. Gandhi has speared the side of a basic little pictogram telling you that's the altar stone. That is the Holy of Holies. The spear in the side of the pictogram shows us the exact location of the fourth T, because there is no two crosses at the back. As I showed you, there's only three on the surface. The three crosses of Shakespeare's baptism. There's only three there. You're looking for five. There's got to be five, otherwise it's desecrated. There's not five. But the literature says ours has only four of the originals, and that is I'm sorry, it's absolutely inaccurate. Because this is not the original, because you can't have a cross on the side of it, but there's a cross on the side, the spear in the side, going into that Holy of Holies altar. And when I saw this, I had to take a very, very close-up picture of it, because I could see only with my bare eyes an outline of something, and I had no idea what it was. I touched it, and it felt sharp. The right-hand little circle of that cross that's on the side. So do you remember now, these sonnets all by E. They're the fourth T. This is now the fourth T. There are only three on the surface. So the fourth T has been added on the side. It is not original. It's much, much smaller. It's a different design. It's a different shape. The ones on the surface are 3 times that size. It's not supposed to be there. Passed off by Stratford as one of the originals. It's not. Because if that had been one of the originals, there would have been 6 consecration crosses. Right? Wrong. Can't be. It's only 5. 5 wounds of Christ. So there it is. What is that little thing there? I touched it with my finger. It was sharp like a diamond. But I couldn't see it clearly enough until I took a very, very high-powered photograph of it and saw that it's a 5-pointed silver star. That is the heraldry of Oxford. Tiny, invisible to the naked eye. It's there, telling you inside here. Well, I couldn't bring my entire fake altar to you, so I'm going to have to show you now just a brief excerpt of a film that some of you may have seen on YouTube on the website tobeornottobe.org. And if you go to that website, you can go, oh, okay, let's have a look at the videos, click on videos, scroll down through the various videos, and down here at the bottom is the Stratford heist full video. So I'm going to go to where that is.
Abracadabra.
Roughly around about
Every vanish
9:30, I think.
I have hewn, cut into stone. Desiderata is Latin for my desires, what I want you to know. He wants us to solve his magic trick. People don't applaud when you make something disappear. You have to bring it back. Why couldn't I just go to the church and tell them what they've got? But alone brings in over $500 million a year. Academia, 100,000 universities and colleges worldwide. You know how many give courses in Shakespeare authorship studies? 2. Nobody wants this boat rocked. And then the monarchy. You see, the main alternate Shakespeare candidate is Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford. Around 1572, there were rumors at court that he and the were texting each other. Some believe they had a child, Henry, who should have become king, but instead a puppet monarch was installed, commencing a very broken lineage that comes down today to Prince Charles. If this was so, it'd make this the true line from the public. Now, granted, this is speculation, but the fact is it doesn't even need to be proven, because there's a very inconvenient truth lurking in this genealogy. Princess Diana, someone made the connection. Anything in there linking De Vere to Shakespeare would potentially mean Diana was actually in line to the throne. It would sink Stratford and the monarchy simultaneously. So I go to the church and ask nicely, what do you think they'll say? Thank you, Alan? This is historic. Let's open it right now in public. Or are they going to take a look in private first? We all know the answer, and there are just 3 possible outcomes. 1, there's nothing there. Alan's a raving lunatic. 2, there is something there, and it supports the official story. It'll be made public overnight. Alan's a hero. 3, what's in there debunks the official story. It'll remain private forever. Alan's Prius develops an electrical problem. I can't announce what I found without potentially destroying it. But I can't not announce it. It's the holy grail of literature. I've got to get slam dunk scientific proof first. Insurance against them changing anything behind the scenes. I spend the next 4 years, 6 trips to Stratford, cultivating the church. I design a calendar for their gift shop featuring John's photos. We plan a Davy Jones fundraising concert. They begin to trust me. I'm granted access to film wherever I want. Finally, I'm just inches from this priceless masterpiece that I know will rewrite history. It's still not close enough. I need to get in. What would you do? You'd offer to do an exclusive preview of your musical next to the grave. They can't spray their guest artist. You'd ask them to turn off all the lights so you could sing the last song by candlelight. It'd be so beautiful and so dark. You'd have your radar technician slip behind the banner during dress rehearsal and put a protective layer down so as not to damage the holy relic. You'd have exactly 3.5 minutes working in total darkness. You'd have a hidden camera person filming the entire thing in night vision. You'd need proof. Nobody would believe you. It's too bloody crazy. The lights would come up. The banner would come down. Nobody would be any the wiser. And you wouldn't have taken anything except zeros and ones. And an hour later, a 400-year-old secret would be on the hard drives of 2 of the leading radar labs in America. That's what you'd do. Rest, science. All consecrated altar stones have to have a saint's cavity hewn into them that holds relics of a saint. A little blue area is what you'd expect to see in the scan. The 2 labs worked independently of one another using separate protocols to assure accuracy, and they both came up with the same result. A cavity, 6.5 foot long, 7 inches deep, 12 to 30 inches wide. It's 250 times the size it's supposed to be. You don't cut a hole this big, into solid marble unless you're going to put something this big into it. Different software programs revealed differing densities within the huge cavity, indicating the possibility of many layers of contents. The missing manuscripts, new, undiscovered masterpieces, who knows? Who'd like to know? How often do you get a chance to rewrite history on that?
So pause it there. This website, tobeornotttobe.org, in case you haven't seen it, has all the links to the YouTube videos and a voting mechanism. So I do believe that the only way that we can make this really work, that the public will actually get interested enough, is to say, put it in a simple story, to be or not to be.
Folks, I think we have lost Alan Green here. I think Alan must have clicked zig when he intended to zag. Oops. Maybe we could do a little. Maybe we could do a little hello here while we wait for Alan to return. I wanted to suggest a few things that are interesting here to me. You know, we believe that Yod He Vav He is when you do the spectrograms of the Hebrew alphabet and look at the sonic geometry of the plicatives that come out of your mouth when you say Yod He Vav He, which I believe is sometimes translated I am that I am, you get Yod, which is a cone going one way, Yod, and He is space filling and amorphous. And Va is the cone the other way. So literally Yod He Vav He is two opposing cones, I am that I am, and two opposing cones in wave mechanics is called basically conjugation between two vortex, phase conjugation. So two opposing cones is also phase conjugation, Yod He Vav He. I see Alan is coming back here. Alan, I hope you. Yes, Alan had a little technical glitch there. You're back, Alan.
Did I have a feeling that we got lost in that video? Did anybody see the video?
No, the video came through it just at the very end. We just lost you for about a minute here.
Oh, okay, so you've only lost me for a minute, thank goodness. All right, so I need to say start sharing again.
Alan, what I was just saying was, I've heard it said that, you know, I am that I am is also, Yod He Vav He is sometimes translated I am that I am, isn't it? Because Yod He Vav He has also been interpreted as Yod and Va, two opposing light tones.
Well, Yod He Vav He is the name of God that you're not supposed to utter to the Jewish community.
It is quite literally two opposing light cones of conjugation as well, you know, beingness, I am that I am.
I think I told you that once, that if you literally revolve Yod He Vav He until you revolve it like Dee revolves the names of the angels, you get Yod He Vav He Yod He Vav He Yod He Vav. He Yod He is the verb to be, and the Vav is a disconnecting point used in the Torah to negative, to say the negative. So literally Yod He Vav He is to be or not to be. It's not I am that I am, but it's another way of expressing God's name.
Yes. And
as to be or not to be.
And a Yod and a Va are quite literally applicative of two opposing cones in the air you make with your mouth, and two opposing cones make a torus, and make phase conjugation. So it kind of is beingness.
Fascinating. Yes, of course. All right. Well, I had just said as that ended, but probably nobody heard me because we lost connection, that we've just done an hour and a half, and I've now got to do the mathematics side of it. So I'm wondering whether we should have a brief question and answer about what has gone on so far, or do you want to move towards the end and have the question and answer at the very end?
I mean, I
It's up to
think
you,
people
Dan.
would probably like you to proceed. I was fascinated at the point where you were talking about the physics of the geometric relationships of meter,
Yeah.
foot,
Okay.
and
So let's get into that. Let's get into that then. All right. So now that at least I hope was enough to make people wonder about John Dee's involvement in the Shakespeare authorship mystery. There's much, much more. It's all documented in that book, Decoding Shakespeare. But it's all about poetic clues and how they have been incorporated into the Enochian Tables. Let me be clear, because I think there might be a slight misunderstanding here of people possibly thinking I'm saying Dee was Shakespeare. Not at all. Dee did not actually write any of, well, as far as we know, did not write any of the text. He was not a particularly good poet. We do have some of his existing poetry, so I don't think it compares at all. But I just want people to understand, I'm not saying Dee had any hand in the writing of Shakespeare's works. I'm saying that he had all the hand that was needed in the mathematics of encrypting. He was the leading cryptographer of the age. After all, he was the leading mathematician of the age. He was the leading magus, and he's the one to whom the Enochian Tables were channeled, which is the basic Rosetta Stone that allows us to completely get to living page, your stigmata, I have hewn desiderata, which leads you to the altar, and then I just had to go and get actual scientific proof because I knew that if I tried to publish it first, it would just never, ever, I'd never be allowed near the church again. I'd spent 6 years cultivating them, 6 trips rather, over 4 years. I'd done a lot for them. We talked about doing a Davy Jones fundraising concert. I was Davy's musical director for some time, 12 years, and I designed a calendar for them, and so I'd done a lot to basically ingratiate myself. That's why I said at the beginning, I'm not going out there opposing the Stratfordians. It's just not beneficial, at least my way of doing it. I had to become their friend, then say, now I've got access, now we've got proof. Only way that this story is going to reach the people is by going to that website and voting. Just vote. Yes, I'd like to know what Shakespeare left, or no, I'm not interested. Let's leave it another 400 years. It's a bit of a leading question, I know. But that's the thrust of it, because otherwise this story is so resisted. Only with numbers, only with virality is it going to get to the fore. To get this to go viral, then people will then be able to show up on their doorstep, maybe with Oprah, maybe with somebody with some clout at Stratford's church and say, do you know 1 million people voted to open your altar in America? What are you going to do about it? And then it's a story. Till then, it's not a story, and the public will just continue to hum and ha and argue over little tiny details, maybe if they even hear about it. But that's my thrust with this. Now, after 6 years of this and getting that book out, and then I took it off the market because I knew I was going to scan the altar, and I didn't want it out there while I was scanning the altar, and I thought I might find something else, and I did. And all of a sudden, the code started turning mathematical and pointing to the Great Pyramid. Now, this document is 5 inches across from left to right. Some of you already know what this is, but for those who don't know, I don't want to spoil the surprise. Document printed in 16.
Ellen, I don't know if we're seeing your screen here. Are we, Ellen?
Oh, if you're not, then we need to do something, obviously. Okay. Oh, we're not seeing it?
No, we're not seeing it. I don't think. No.
Okay.
We haven't seen your screen since
hold
you
on.
went off.
Oh, you haven't seen my screen. All right. Well, both my buttons say, Dan, my button says, if I click on it, stop sharing the screen. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to restart sharing the screen then, because obviously something is disconnected.
Well, Ellen, you just clicked off your webcam, but that's different than the screen share.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. All right. Start sharing webcam. That's back on. Now.
Yes.
Stop sharing microphone. It says this session is being recorded. There's nothing that's saying. Okay.
To the left, it's share your screen is to the left of the record button.
No, the record button on mine, on a Mac, to the left says, stop sharing your webcam.
Oh, wait, I know, Alan. Excuse me, Alan, here. I need to reset you to presenter. Excuse me, Alan.
Okay.
Because after we lost you, I had to reset you as presenter. Now I just reset you as presenter. Now try it.
Okay. So do you see my keynote now?
No, but
Sure.
click. You need to reinitiate screen sharing because after we lost you, I had to reinitiate you as presenter, and then
Right,
you
let's
had to
do that.
reinitiate screen share.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So reinitiate,
Yes.
share your screen. Okay.
There you go. Yes. You see
And
that button's not visible to you till
I
I
see no
set you as
difference, but
presenter.
do you see pyramids now?
It should come hopefully.
No,
Not
you
yet.
should be seeing it. Not yet. Okay, I probably have to go through this process again of downloading the yeah, okay. It'll only take a moment. I go to here, I have to open
Yeah.
this screen share app again.
Yeah,
Going
when we
across.
lost
Don't worry.
we lost you.
And
Maybe I could make just a quick comment while you do that, Alan, that when John Michel so famously showed the complete geometric cascade between the Roman pace, the megalithic yard, and the pyramid inch, and the British foot, everything fitted perfect geometry except the meter. It didn't fit the geometry cascade at all. And so I'm intrigued that you found the meter in the geometric nesting of the other sacred units of measure. I would love to talk more. Oh, there you go, Alan. You're successful now.
okay, good. All right.
Okay.
So now tell me if you see the keynote. You should admit this.
Yes, we got you. I think yes.
All right. Well, I will deal with that. Yes, of course. I happen to think that it was because the meter was hidden so mathematically. I'll just show you. I'm not going to cast aspersions on John Michel's work. I just want to say
No,
what I have found.
but please just present
So,
what you wanted to say. Go ahead with what you wanted to say, Alan. Please.
so now you're going to see a document on screen. I did, as I said before, I don't want to spoil the surprise for those who don't know what this is, but many of you will know because you've come to it from the video that showed what this is. But let's keep the suspense going for those who don't know. This is a document printed in 1609. And it's very interesting because Dee says, now you remember in the Sonnets Dedication, every word was separated by dots. In the introduction to Maximilian that John Dee wrote for his Monas Hieroglyphica, he said a very pregnant phrase. He said, in it there be not one superfluous dot, not one dot wanting. He actually gave away his system of encoding because everybody that has tried to decode Shakespeare or in cryptography in general, you never count the punctuation, you just count the letters. And all of a sudden, here's Dee telling directly dots are important. And we saw they were important in the dedication. They were giving you that these sonnets all by E, B, F, or T. And so they are important in the Enochian Tables, and they are important here in this document. There are dots here. Here they are, punctuation. One dot is enormous, drawing attention to itself, the G dot. But let's just start with that T. You see that TT? Remember that the key? TT, Thomas Thorpe. Thomas Thorpe, THTH. On the cover of this document, he's using just the letters TT, the same as he did on the dedication to the sonnets. TT. And that T is angled to the right, italicized.
No,
That's
it was
intended.
Harvard's cell phone that he was using.
I'm hearing other phones. I don't know. So, do you want to fix that now? Okay. Are we all right? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Who is this?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, Dan. So long as I know that, I just didn't want it to go on and find that no one was hearing. I heard another phone cut in, that's all. So we're okay?
Yeah.
Everyone's hearing? Okay.
Yes.
The T
Yes.
slants to the right, almost suggesting a t-square. And if we were to use it as a t-square, which is used to join 2 points, connect this dot to that dot, indeed, that's what it's indicating. The other dot that's jumping out at us, the large G dot, if we now connect that to both of these dots, we have a perfect right-angled triangle. Now, the chances of this are not huge, but there's a certain number to it, about 1 in 10,000. But as you start compounding, if you join the very edge of this line to the G dot, same hypotenuse, you've got another perfect right-angled triangle. Same with this line, another perfect right-angled triangle. Same with the Aspley dot down here, another perfect right-angled triangle. Now the odds of probability are in the triple hundreds of trillions. In other words, it's not random. And this triangle is a perfect 3, 4, 5 triangle. The famous Pythagorean icon used by the Freemasons, and without which we couldn't do basic engineering. Right? 3, 4, 5 triangle. Perfect. What is this really hiding? By taking that G to D dot as the common hypotenuse of all these triangles, it turns out it's the absolute center diameter of a circle, going through all those 6 points. And this is a visual representation of something called Thales' theorem. And Thales was famous for being the first person to write down on a parchment a mathematical theorem, but he was far better known as the first person to measure the height. He did it using the geometry of right-angled triangles. So if we complete the image of Thales' theorem, there are 2 more points here where they cross those 2 lines, giving us 6 perfect right-angled triangles. Now, obviously, nobody goes to this trouble to do this, to encrypt mathematics on the cover of a document here that you'll soon find out what it is. Why? We're obviously intended to question further and start measuring. Well, this divided by that. 3.142, as we all know, that is pi. Now, pi was known during the Renaissance, of course, and so not any surprise that they could get it that accurately. I want to say to you, I'm using the highest resolution copy of this particular document, licensed from a highly reputable museum in Washington. There are only 4 of them in existence of this document, of this particular version of this document. And I've then further blown it up 5 times in my software, and the software is doing the measuring of the lines. I'm not juggling these numbers. I'm just drawing the lines and having the software measure it. And we get pi. What about this? That divided by that. That is not so well known, but it's E, Euler's number. Not derived until mid-1700s. E is a fascinating number that is just as important as pi. It's just not known. And it's in calculus and probability theory. It's all over mathematics. Very, very important.
The base of the natural log. Yes.
Base of natural logarithms. Yes. Newton found it when he was creating calculus. I'll show you that part. Well, as well as Jacob Bernoulli. But it's not so well known that E minus 1 is important. In fact, today we don't know that E minus 1 is even treated as a special constant, but it is. And I will soon show you why, but that is precisely 1.718. 2.718 is E, and that one is 1.718. Now I'm going to spare you the math on all this. I'm going through it quickly because people's eyes glaze over with mathematics often, but I'm just going to show you the results, but the results are accurately documented on another YouTube channel for those who want to go into all the details. This is B2. B2 is known as Brune's constant. It wasn't discovered until 1919, over 300 years later when this document was printed. It is It is a number that is basically to do with twin primes, prime numbers that are separated by 2. Euclid proved that there are infinite number of primes, but they're twin primes, those that are separated by 2, like 17 and 19, or 3 and 5. When you get into the numbers way out there, there's billions of digits, there are still twin primes. They are so important. We couldn't run banking without them because they are the twin primes are the way that we can do online secure encryption. Well, prime numbers in general, but twin primes have a special property. And this is the actual constant called Brune's constant that defines twin primes. This divided by this, there's one we know, golden ratio, 5. And if you do it in the reverse order, it's phi minus 1. So you've got E and E minus 1 on the left, balanced perfectly by phi and phi minus 1 on the right. Phi and phi minus 1 derived from the Fibonacci series, which we've all heard about thanks to Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code. But there is an alternate, an extension of Fibonacci called Tribonacci. Nobody particularly knows about, but it's the same as another series. This gives us Tribonacci. So you've got Tribonacci hidden in those 2 lines, Fibonacci hidden in the 2 bottom lines. Then you take these 2 lines divided by the diameter and you get √3. And if you invert it, you get the Euler-Mascheroni constant, another incredibly important constant that was not discovered until about 150 years after this was published. So you've got, I mean, this, what is all this? Who went to this trouble and who could possibly know all this? I am going to simply now answer the question that came up on the boards the other day. Why has he chosen the circle to be just where it is? As though I chose it. I didn't choose it. I just showed you it's the perfect, the G to the D is the perfect diameter. It's got nothing to do with me choosing to place a circle there. You can't find a circle anywhere else, but it's there. But it leaves these 2 lines hanging out over on the left. Why are they there? What's that got to do with anything? Turns out that if you draw a right angle through that diameter from this 1609 dot, it's pointing out the end of that line. I mean, that line could have ended anywhere, but it didn't. And if you draw a tangent at that letter G, parallel to that line, it points out the end of the other line. Obviously, another part of the encoding, you must measure them. And when you measure them, it turns out that this is giving you a triangle that reveals √2 and √6 and √5. I'm jumping past the math quickly, but those who are mathematically inclined can either write to me for a fuller explanation, and I'll show you where it is on YouTube. √2, √6, √5. Look at this. All this embedded, as well as this line is foot, this line in ratio to it is cubit, these lines in ratio to it are meter. You remember my saying that I discovered that in the Great Pyramid, that going by 2 lines up to the pyramidion, down by the corner and across the base gave you the cubit and then gave you the meter. Whoever did this has encoded foot, cubit, meter in there as well. Another thing that, how can that be known? Meter wasn't invented in 1609,
Right.
but it's there. 5 of these were not known. E minus 1, E, Tribonacci, Euler-Mascheroni, Brune's constant, they weren't known. Somebody knew them. Meter wasn't known. All right, so all that has been done with the miraculous combination of 2 lines and 4 dots. Can you imagine giving that to any mathematician? I don't care if you were to give that to Stephen Hawking today. I doubt he could, and say, could you write 4 dots and 2 lines in such a way that it is going to give us a perfect 3 decimal accuracy, 12 of the most significant constants, and foot, meter, cubit relationship, and more that you haven't yet seen. I mean, it's a staggering piece of mathematical gymnastics that is way beyond anything that we can even imagine. And it's all placed here to look like it's just part of the punctuation. So what about these 2 dots here that haven't been used so far that are indicating what? TT. What does TT mean? Thomas Thorpe, THTH, I am that I am, the name of God, the divine message within this. Wow. And now let's look at the letters that have been left outside the circle by G. During Renaissance times, the letter G was used to indicate the globe, the Earth. Pythagoreans used it to mean geometry itself or geodesy, measuring the Earth by G. So if this circle really does represent the globe, perhaps, to be measuring by G, there's an E outside the circle, easterly, perhaps. All these lines radiating out of this big letter G now begin to look perhaps so they are hinting at lines of latitude. That is a straight baseline of 0 in the easterly direction. We have another bottom baseline that we discovered, don't we? This tangent to the globe there that points out this left-hand line here. If we treat that as a 0 degree, then I'm not showing you in this because I'm rushing it along, but essentially all the angles that go out from that G are 20 degrees exactly. 20 and a 20 and a 20, except these two marked blue and gold. So since they are not exactly 20 degrees, I decided to measure them by trigonometry. Not just do it using a protractor, it's not going to be accurate enough, but you must by trigonometry calculate the lines of these triangles, and then you get this. Now this is clearly oriented to the north of its baseline, so perhaps that is balanced against this one, which is clearly oriented to the east of its baseline, north and east. NE, left outside the circle. What does that perhaps indicate? Latitude north, longitude east. Put them into Google Earth and I know. I don't know what to say really beyond that, except what?
And didn't you say, Alan, that the concept of, was it longitude, wasn't hardly even known till Dee sort of pioneered that?
I will go into that. I was just giving people a space to breathe, Dan. It's like, what? How? What? They didn't even know how to do longitude. Now, John Dee in his writings tells us he'd solved longitude, and he was pushing this to the Queen along with the whole colonization and finding the perfect calendar, and much of it was not taken up by the Queen because of Cecil's objections to it. But we know that John Dee says he'd solved the longitude problem. But 25 years after this, in 1634, Galileo was still wrestling with the problem of longitude. He couldn't figure it out. We knew latitude, but longitude was a big mystery because it relied on absolute perfect timing of clocks, and ships at the time used to hug the coastlines because they didn't dare venture out away from coastlines that they could recognize because of getting lost. Now, some did, obviously, but the point is, maps of the Mediterranean are off from the Renaissance times, sometimes by hundreds of miles in an east-west direction. We had no idea. And yet, you look at the latitude, that's the absolute dead center of the Great Pyramid. He's got the latitude right to 99.999% accuracy. He's got the longitude right, 99.99% accuracy, when nobody else could get within hundreds of miles.
Right.
It's a pretty dramatic and stunning piece of encoding. All right. We did this. Well, I'm just going to zip across to a portion of the CPAC talk here to say that this, it had to have been prehistory. We are not able to comprehend what has been done here. because this is the cover of Shakespeare's sonnets, all hidden in the punctuation. 12 constants in the cover of Shakespeare's sonnets, which I am now going to show you very quickly, are the exact same constants that I found in Great Pyramid. Exactly the same. Now, I only found them because Shakespeare was pointing me to them. And I'm not saying I had any particularly wonderful powers of observation, but I see these 12 constants on the cover, and I see him pointing us and saying, look at this, there's the Great Pyramid. Go look at the pyramid. Are you still seeing this keynote, by the way? I just want to make sure we've still got connection.
Yes, it looks good from here as far as I can see.
Okay. So in 1859, John Taylor published a book called The Great Pyramid. Why was it built and who built it? And he was the first person to notice the mathematical connection between some of the proportions of the basic units of the pyramid. He found that this basic 1411 proportion, which is 280 by 220 in cubits, gives us pi and phi, what's known as a Kepler triangle, basically. If that unit at the bottom is 1, side is phi, and the other is root phi, but that's about 4 over pi. Very, 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 very close. They cannot be exactly the same, and so this is why it's almost pointless to argue the fine details of, well, how exactly is that angle, because it's different on different sides of the pyramid slightly, and the measurements are slightly different. Well, first of all, we're looking at a pyramid that is at least 4,500 years old, and all, in bad state of repair. So there's no way that we can go back and say that we're measuring it absolutely accurately according to its original intent. But the math indicates that it is so close as can be geometrically possible. Also, somebody in 2002 noticed that possibly E is there, but that was ignored completely. So I decided to look at it, and I find another total of 12 constants. Okay. I will just show you very, very quickly that using the basic diagonal half base, side slope, corner slope, height, traditional units of cubits, everybody says it's a base 440, height 280, the rest become automatically calculated by Pythagorean theory. You get that angle, you get these. And I'm just going to plug those in, simply because I'm not trying to, cherry pick the numbers, because there's no way we can say for sure, but using what everybody agrees is the basic dimensions, I'm going to show you that. I know that people don't like mathematics, so I throw that in to cheer them up. For those that do like mathematics, it's okay. You can go to the YouTube channel and see it all explained like this. But for the rest of us who just want a nice, normal daily life, I'm just going to skip through it and show you the basics. I'm not skipping through them, that I'm being lax in this, but I'm just going to show you. If you want the math itself, you can find it. Diagonal divided by base gives you square root of 2. That's the only one that's actually got nothing to do with the height of the pyramid at all, because it's just the base, it's the square, it's the natural function of a square. That's just it, it's 100% accurate. Here's how you get pi, dividing 2 bases by vertical height, gives you pi, and it's accurate to 100.04% accuracy. You then have these diagonals. You get gamma. That's the Euler-Mascheroni constant that was not discovered by Euler until 1734, and yet there it was on the sonnets, and here it is in the pyramid. 100% accurate. If you invert that, you get the square root of 3. If you do this, you've got the square root of 5. This gives you the square root of 6. 6 and 5 and 3 and 2 are all part of this special thing called the spiral of Theodorus. Theodorus basically decided to start with a square, and by putting unity at each side and a right angle, he said, oh, we've got root 3, root 4, root 5, root 6, and was able to prove that these are all irrational numbers, except for root 4, which of course is 2. So you end up with, there's 2 and 3, there's 5 and 6, all in the pyramid. This is basically the overthrow of the Pythagoreans, because they were terribly upset to find that incommensurables or irrational numbers existed, because they thought everything could be brought down to absolute a unity. But it was quite a historic moment to change the whole concept of mathematics into including irrational numbers. And of course, if you were to go all the way around, it goes all the way around to root 17 and on and on and on to infinity. But here they are in the pyramid, root 2, root 3, root 5, root 6. Start of those triangles that indicate irrationality. This simply, the side slope divided by the half base, gives you the golden ratio, 5. Fibonacci sequence. Remember there was the Fibonacci sequence in the sonnets? Here it is in the poem. That wasn't studied until 1914. Here we've got I minus 1. Sorry, that went by very quickly, but that's the inverted Fibonacci sequence that is also on the cover of the sonnets. And if you then take the phi, I'm sorry, next one is B2, Bruin's constant. Remember the one that predicts twin prime numbers? Discovered in 1919. Is taking that phi and dividing it into the base gives us E times 100. 100 E exactly, down to almost 4 decimal places over. And the final one that I told you was important in that discovery of finding foot and cubit, that gives you E minus 1. Now we're going to look at that, but you realize that I just showed you exactly the same 12 constants. Exactly the same, that are on the sonnets cover. We look in greater detail now at what I showed you earlier. That's a foot, that's a cubit, and this is a meter. That just happens to be, by the way, the shortest way that you can connect all of the points. If you start at the outside and you connect where that green starts, go to the middle, go to the pyramidion, down to the corner, down to the other corner, across the diagonal in purple and up back. We haven't lifted the pen from paper. If you were tracing that, you haven't gone back over anything. You've covered all the 9 points on the base, and you've gone and ended up at the pyramidion in the shortest number of moves possible. I actually invented this as a game for my students and then realized what it was showing me. It's the shortest way that you can connect all the points of the pyramid, and yet it gives us cubit, when brought down in ratio, cubit, foot, meter. However, accurate to only 2 5,000ths of a foot and 4 5,000ths of a meter, and that's why, as I told you, I go to Egypt to say, let's measure this absolutely accurately, because I suspect that because it's impossible to have all those constants be so perfectly connected geometrically and the foot, cubit, meter to be perfect, and I suspect this is where John Michel might have missed the meter. It's not possible geometric to have them be utterly perfectly connected to those constants, but they are so close in that angle that it's suspicious, and you think, okay, maybe that indent has something to do with it. You see, if you were to change that angle at all, so that the height changes, well, it all falls apart, except for root 2, which is just on the square. Slightly higher, slightly lower, you do not have that interconnectedness of all those constants. Only here, at that precise angle, do they all line up and give you the beauty of this connection. Now, because foot, cubit, meter is so close, I have decided to say there must be, if they are dealing from perfection, there must be a way of connecting these such that using those, oh, this is another delay, I'm sorry, due to the outage, and I didn't get time to edit this. Well, it's going forward. There's the green, there's the red, and there's the purple, giving you that connection. If we to examine it now exactly, that's giving you the vertical height, and it's using the vertical height, corner height, and side height. It's the fastest way that you connect all the points on the pyramid, and they represent foot, cubit, and meter. Well, do they? Exactly. Let me now show you the map of it. There's the foot. This measures 1.718 feet cubic. That is the structure of E. E is a very special number, as you rightly pointed out, Dan, natural base of logarithms, tremendously important.
Yeah.
Yet it has 2 parts. It, of necessity, inherently, is 1 and then the amount that it grows. Jacob Bernoulli in 1683 is studying compound interest. What's the fastest way that I can make money? And he postulated, well, if I was able to compound interest, not monthly, not weekly, not daily, but constantly, where would it end up? Start with $1 that you borrow from the bank. It's the same formula the banks use today to calculate the interest that we owe on our credit cards. If you borrowed one and you were to have maximum compound interest, it converges to 1.718, and that is E, 2.718. But it is two parts. The 1 and the 1.718 is integral to its structure. It's not just a number, 2.718. It's what you start with plus how much it grows. Newton, this is showing that it's used in calculus. It shows up in calculus, in probability theory, in population growth, predicting epidemics. Its reverse shows up in radioactive decay. I mean, it's just everywhere in mathematics. And Newton did the same thing in 1669 with this formula when he was inventing calculus. 1 over 1 factorial, 1 over 2 factorial, 3 factorial, 4 factorial, to infinity. It converges to 1.718. So it's 1 plus 1.718. The structure of it is E. And it turns out now that this foot-cubic relationship that Newton was looking for all his life, but he couldn't get it because he couldn't get it accurate enough measurements of the pyramid at the time. Failed to find it. He did not publish that discovery of that factorial equation until 42 years after he'd first discovered it. Right at the end of his life, he discovered it because he was holding out. He was hoping to find what he called the sacred connection between feet and cubits, and he didn't find it. And he certainly didn't suspect it was connected to meters because we didn't have meters then, and yet we are told, oh, well, it's just the foot is basically the average length of the foot, cubit is the distance from the point of your fingers to the elbow. But that doesn't really make sense, and especially when you see, I mean, maybe as a rough guide, yes, but mathematic structure, we see now that it's more than that. It is E, a universal constant of growth. How could we just decide arbitrarily that a foot is this long and a cubit is this long, and it just happens to be E? It doesn't make a lot of sense if the Romans invented the foot and they just calculated from what? I think they've been sold a used car by the most prominent Egyptologists who insist there can't possibly be anything in the Great Pyramid. There's no pi, there's no phi. They didn't know that. We hadn't invented the wheel yet. So move along, folks. There's nothing to see. If you were divine, if you are creating a universe and you look at your vast star fields, do you want them to be measured by the most pure, beautiful mathematical accuracy possible, or just the foot is fairly arbitrary? No, the Egyptian foot is important. It's there, it's part of a beautiful mathematical symmetry. And so we have to say, okay, that's there. What about the meter? Is there a mathematical connection then that makes sense with the meter? And if we measure this in the pyramid, it measures 3.281, which you could say is accurate to 4 or 5 thousandths of a meter, but it's only 99.93% accuracy. It's still darn good. It's there. They're showing it. But I've told you, it cannot physically coexist in geometry with that same angle. And yet, there is a connection that is absolutely pure, beautiful mathematics. If you divide a circle into these quadrants, not quadrants, 30-degree angles, you make it a meter radius. The circumference is 12 cubits. This arc is cubic, which is pi over 6, the way we measure radian. 0.5235. There's a connection between meter and cubit that's pure math. There's a connection between foot and cubit that's pure math. I think the reason the Egyptologists don't see it, the scientists today don't see it, and that John Michel did not see it, is because nobody could spot the connection between foot and meter, because the missing part is the cubit. That doesn't seem to have any relationship. the cubit that connects the two via its perfection in mathematics. The cubit foot is E. Therefore, the cubit is E minus 1. Therefore, the meter cubit has a connection of pi over 6. And they all connect in the following way. And it goes even deeper. How could we have missed this? Because we're not looking at cubit. We haven't used cubit for 2,000 years. Do you realize a meter plus a cubit is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 feet? Accurate to 2/50,000ths of a foot. That is the width of a red blood cell. Meter cubit is 5 feet. Therefore, meter cubic foot is 6 feet. 5 and 6, well known in sacred geometry as the connection between the human and the divine. 5 represents human, 6 represents the divine. It's used all over in numerology and in sacred geometry. Well, I won't go there.
Alan, just to mention that, I had worked with John Michel when he did the pure geometric sequence from the foot to the royal cubit, Palestinian cubit, Roman pace, megalithic yard, and the British yard. And he was so sure that the meter was not sacred. And so I did the geometry and proved that the foot was precisely Planck length times golden ratio to the 164 power, mean phase conjugate charge collapse, electrically implosive. And so all the other dimensions were electrically implosive as well. And now you've just added the meter, something that John Michel never did. So it's beautiful to me anyway.
Thank you. I think another part of the puzzle is that, as Newton himself said, measures become corrupted over time. He states it very nicely in his notes. He says, the foot, he said that our foot is 1.00025 too big. He said it's become corrupted. This measure that I've put in is when it's corrected to precisely 1. And that, again, might be what John Michel missed. I don't know. No, we can talk about this in private. But essentially, in other words, Newton's explanation for it was, say, a boss. Let's put it in the master-slave paradigm, because it probably was that. Master comes to slave, build me a piece of metal that's 1 foot long. And the slave builds it and gets it too short. All his work is ruined, it's forgotten, he'll throw it away, do it again. Newton said, no, it's natural human nature to make it slightly bigger, so that should the boss come to you and say this is slightly wrong, you just shave a bit off. Very interesting human insight.
From a charge embedding viewpoint, we're saying implosive charge collapse is the function of sacred dimension, and Planck length times golden ratio to exactly 164 power is actually 0.9964 feet, which means that his number of 1.0025 error is almost exactly fitting my equation. So I think I'm agreeing with Newton here.
The correction then would bring it into line. Yeah, and I've got one more surprise for you, Dan, coming up, because you're going to love this, but I'm going to save it for the end because you're going to be just so delighted. Anyway, okay, so there you go, 5 and 6, and they are, so literally what you've really got here is what I'm calling a universal constant measure, because the foot is connected to the cubit by pure math. The cubit is connected to the meter by pure math. The meter and cubit combined is connected to the foot by the pure math of 5 and 6. One's connecting by E, one's connecting by pi, one's connecting by 5 and 6. It is a universal constant of measure. It is literally not just one measure. It is one unit that are inextricably tied to each other by mathematical purity. So it makes no sense at all that this was literally just, that it existed in a vacuum, and that we just invented feet when the Romans came along, we invented meter when the French came along, it was reinvented, it was rediscovered, but how could it be sitting there in the Great Pyramid to such utter perfection if there was not some kind of, we wouldn't go and say, we all know the cubit was used in biblical times, so presumably that was used to build the Great Pyramid, but there's a big argument over whether the foot was used to build the pyramid or the meter was used to build the pyramid, and yet it seems to be there all over the place. And that's because of this relationship that I'm pointing out here, green, red, purple. But it gets even more perfect because, as I showed you, if we account for that tiny, tiny indent, then the meter cubic foot relationship becomes not just 99.93%, but perfect. Somewhere along that indent line from the pinnacle down to the base, where it's only about 3 feet out in the very center, that was put in purposely as the only way that they could change the angle sufficiently that it would metaphorically represent all these constants and the mathematical purity of a foot cubic meter. Now I'm going to move on to the last section and just sum it all up with,
Ta-da!
no, that you've got this still. When I got back from CPAC and having shown those 12 constants, I knew that I didn't have them all. I mean, those are the 12 that are on the cover of the Sonnets. And you have to conclude then that somehow or other, this has been passed down. Because all those they're in the cover of the Sonnet. And they're in the pyramid. And he's embedded the geographic coordinates of the Sonnets and telling us to look at of the pyramid. And he's telling us to look at the pyramid. Okay, so where is this all leading? If there is absolute perfection, then it just occurred to me it's very bizarre. I mean, why have mathematicians and physicists and engineers not looked into this deeper since John Taylor announced in 1859 that pi and phi were there? Why is it left up to somebody to find there are 12? I'm just a pianist. but out of curiosity, I'm finding it from the Shakespeare angle. Well, the beautiful thing is that once you then look, you start finding in these same proportions other constants. Now, it gets so ludicrous that I have mapped out all of these, and my only conclusion can be, I've stopped looking now because it's pointless. I think, well, let me just show you where this is going. Let's see. Have I have time to, had I fix this? No, I'm showing you something that I've already shown you. I'm going to go past there. Here we go. So I've shown you how the 12 are there. But if you then use that same methodology to say, I'm only using base, diagonal, height, corner slope height, side slope height, half base. If in some combination they derive these basic constants, that's wonderful. I wonder how many others are there. And I kept looking and I kept looking and I kept looking. This is all I've done since I got back from CPAC, and the total is now a ludicrous total, which kind of indicates that I don't think for a minute that the builders of the pyramid said, oh, let's encode all these constants in here, that some of which have not even been discovered yet. No. I think once you get that Kepler triangle side, and you get the basics of that 51.843 degree angle, and they're all so close to each other, I think it just makes perfect sense that the others naturally, inherently flow from that. All other constants are probably somehow derived from those basics. And so what I've discovered is that here's the pi and the phi and the e. And you're looking at a graph of the last 20%, imagine this graph goes all the way down to 0. That's how close they are to 100% accuracy to each other in the Great Pyramid. And then you get root 2, of course, but you also get root 2 plus 1, which is the silver constant, is that, the silver ratio, as well as the golden ratio. And then since e minus 1 and phi minus 1 seem to be important in this whole calculation, I put root 2 minus 1 in, and there it is also. Absolutely calculatable from the basic pyramid. Then you look at e minus 1 and phi minus 1 and pi minus 1, and they're there, and there's the Fibonacci, and there's the plastic constant, which is related to the golden ratio and the silver ratio. And then there's root 3 and root 5 and root 6 and root 7, and then there's the Bruns constants. B2 we know, but there's also B1, which is another version of Bruns, which covers the basic absolute unity of prime numbers, and there's a B4 which deals with prime numbers that are separated into groups of 4, and B4C which is called cousin primes, and they all line up to be 100% accurate to the Great Pyramid. C2, the twin primes constant itself, 100% basically. P1 and P2, they're called the Prevost primes, and then you've got A Paris constant and a whole bunch that I don't need to name, Ramanujan and Kinchin, and why are they all lining up? As I say, I don't think it even makes sense to think that the builders are consciously saying this. It's just a natural. Obviously, we look for beauty inherent in the mathematics of the universe, and if all these constants end up being embedded in that same formula for the pyramid, to me it just makes sense that they are an inherent natural consequence of the shape of that pyramid. But the one that you're going to love is Planck's reduced constant. Damn! There's Planck. And it is the most accurate of them all. I added here I squared over 6 and the Euler-Mascheroni constant, and another one that just seems so brilliant to me, Euler times the Mascheroni. That's a special combination, and on and on and on. So I've stopped looking because there's about 40 there. Now this shows you how it changes if you, that's where they line up. Now we're now looking at the top end of the graph. This is between 99.93% accurate and 100.04% accurate. They all line up there. It looks like a big difference, but we're looking at the last 0.01% of the whole graph there. That's where they line up at the GP angle. If you change that angle, you're going to see how now it all shifts. I've run it back to the where you can see it in the top 20%. Change that angle. These are going to stay the same because they're all on the base. They're root 2 related. But the others, change the angle by 0.5 of a degree, they'll start to slip out of place. Of course, they're going to fall apart. If you take it to, I mean, they're just not there anymore. If you take the angle down, here you go, down, they get further and further out, further and further out. Then I started looking at I, the imaginary unit, square root of -1. And if you end up with that's I, and then there's the square root of I, and there's the cube root of I, and the fourth root of I, and these are all important constants. And when you look at them online, you say, apparently, these derivations of I are all important, and there they all are, all lined up with the Great Pyramid. And again, if you change the angle of the pyramid, they all slip out of shape because they're not going to stay there. This one will, square root of I will stay absolutely solid.
Alan,
Yeah.
I think that at a half-hour overtime, our record function may not work. It's a
Okay, so let's turn it over to question and answer now. I just wanted you to see, and I'm just going to show you only this in the spreadsheet. Here are all of the constants that I've mapped out now that are all accurately there in the Great Pyramid. And here's yours, Planck. Planck H is the reduced one, and it's derived from literally 1.0545713, and you look at it, it's the height plus the height plus side slope plus the diagonal divided by the corner slope and side slope. And it gives it you, and it's the most accurate of all. It is accurate to 99.99995%. Ta-da! I just thought you'd like that, and no doubt we'll have some discussion about that because goodness gracious, light is embedded into the. We all know it is from the latitude. The latitude is 29.979248, which is speed of light in meters per second.
Well, and that's,
So,
that
all
would
right.
be
So
the implication would be that indeed that this is about wave mechanics ultimately, and Planck is the same 100 billion light years from here. It's the same, and so the wave mechanics is what creates the embedding that creates the charge class, which is what creates the negentropy. So functionally, it's the pure interference geometry of wave mechanics that is so beautifully represented there. And one could then talk about the electrical meaning, which becomes even more wonderful. So, but it's beautiful work, really. You're to be congratulated, Alan. And it's so late, I don't know if anybody else wants to say something here, or
please do have if anybody want. Do you turn the mic on now, or just open up the,
yes,
the board?
or just look at the chat window too.
Okay.
It just
Well,
someone's saying
of
about.
course, I'm only seeing the latest one. So, does anybody want to post something right now to say yes? Please listen to my question.
I think it's okay. They're just saying thank you, Alan. Really, uh, how incredible it is. And I think the conversation might be another time since we're a half hour
Okay, all right.
overtime. But everybody's just grateful for your work, really, Alan. Thank you so much. It's so beautiful. And
It is my pleasure. I'm very, very privileged to be on this, doing this with you. So let's just
yes,
talk again. And if there's an interest in going any further, I have there's an awful lot that I haven't shown about John Dee's encodings in the Gravestone and in the monument that is just so beautiful
yes.
that if somebody wants to see it, we can perhaps do another one at some point. So I look forward to.
Conversation to be continued. And remember
Sorry?
how useful this video is, that we'll then share that this is a way to stimulate that dialogue to be continued. So the video itself becomes a very important record of what you've accomplished. It's really, we're all applauding.
Will I lose? Dan, I want to ask a question. Will I lose all these comments if I now sign out? I want to copy these so that I can look through and see if I can answer anybody's questions. So, can I just copy and paste all this on the right hand side? I'm trying, but it doesn't happen.
Yes. So I'm going to turn off the recording now before we lose it. But I just want to thank you, Alan, and thank everyone. It's been really, truly fabulous. Alan, you are the reincarnation of Shakespeare John Dee's dream to bring this to us. So we thank you. And it fits so much what Teresa's doing and what James Egan is doing, that we just, the dialogue continues, the magic continues. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay. Blessings. Oh, I turn off the recording. Thank you. Let's stay in touch, everybody.
Yes, definitely.